Good morning and welcome to Bernadoodle's Barnyard. It's a beautiful day in July, so I have a lot to say when it comes to the raising of meat rabbits, but I don't want this video to be too much of a rant, so what I'm going to do is keep it to a 3-topic concise rant about meat rabbits. One will be why I raise meat rabbits. Second topic will be why I raise them, how I raise them, which is in hutches. And the third thing is why I care what the rabbits look like. So starting with the first topic of why I raise meat rabbits, this is a personal thing for me. I'm not critiquing anyone else's choices on what they eat. I'd never tell you what to eat, but you'd be very surprised at how many people tell me that what I eat is disgusting. So I find that very offensive. Why I choose to do meat rabbits. One is that I did raise the meat goats for a little while, and I may do sheep again or pigs. Probably won't do goats again just because not my thing really. But on a small farm, I need to choose a smaller protein because the goats take up all of my pastures. So if I wanted to do a big beef animal, I'd really have to get rid of the goats. You'd be surprised how much they eat. Most of my property is wooded, so the pastures are really limited, and to give my goats good nutrition, where I'm not bringing in all of their hay and pellet supplementary, which would be very expensive, I choose to let my dairy goats graze. So since I've chosen milk, I've also chosen not to do a cow. If I wanted to get rid of all the goats and maybe do one dairy cow and a steer for meat, that would be a possibility, but I like my dairy goats. So that's why I don't do a cow. Pigs don't take up a lot of room, and you're bringing in a lot of their feed, so I might do pigs sometime, but not right now. I've never dealt with pigs before, so that'll be a new adventure at some point. Sheep take up the same footprint as the goats, and I love lamb, so maybe at some point I will add some meat sheep, but not right now. So when it comes to small animals for meat, my options are chicken, quail, and rabbit. Quail is kind of an interesting one, but for the same reason I don't do chickens for meat, that's why I picked the rabbit. I really don't like plucking the animals. Plucking feathers to me is yucky, smelly. I don't enjoy it. So if I'm going to be butchering animals for meat, the rabbit is a lot cleaner to butcher. All of the fur comes off when I skin it, so I'm not dealing with plucking feathers. I find that the meat smells a lot cleaner and it's less slimy than the poultry. So that's one of the reasons I enjoy butchering the animals instead of doing poultry. And then the reason why I do the meat is because I actually found I really love the taste of it better. It's a very nice white meat. It's very similar to chicken. It has more flavor though. It's very nice flavored. And there are quite a few myths when it comes to rabbit meat. So one of those myths is that you can't sustain yourself on rabbit meat because it doesn't have enough fat. This goes around, I hear it from everybody. You cannot sustain yourself on wild rabbit meat alone because a wild rabbit is running around, it's very lean, and it has almost no fat. So if you're eating wild rabbit, you need to substitute in fish or cooking oils, other things to make it so so you have enough fat in your diet. But when it comes to a farm-raised rabbit, if you're doing it right, which I wasn't in the beginning and now I am, you feed them unlimited feed and they get really fatty. So the fat content of a rabbit is not an issue. I could just eat rabbit and be fine. There's a lot of protein in rabbit and the fat is very healthy. So one of the reasons I like rabbit over chicken is that you're feeding a rabbit a pellet or hay, they're eating grass, and the fat they're producing in their bodies is omega-3 like fish. When you feed a chicken corn and soy, their fat actually changes. So you end up with lots of omega-6 fat, which is less healthy for you. If you were to feed a chicken on pasture, so if I were to let my chickens run around and eat bugs and grass and natural things for them, funny enough, their fat's actually omega-3 and healthy for you. So a lot of the chicken you buy in the store is really not great for you if you eat in large quantities because you're eating a lot of omega-6 fats, even though it's a leaner meat. So I like that part of raising rabbits. Also, if you look at the nutritional breakdown, they have a lot more vitamins and minerals than chicken do. You have a lot of B vitamins in a rabbit, which is great for you. I'll try to find a breakdown and leave it in the description for you guys. They have different breakdown of nutrition though. So chicken has some stuff that rabbit doesn't have. Rabbit has a lot of stuff that chicken doesn't have. If you eat both, that's also really good for you. So for me personally, why I eat rabbit is because it takes up a small footprint on the farm, so I can use more space for the goats. It also, I love the taste. I love cooking with it, and I actually enjoy butchering it. So a lot of you might think, how could you? How could you butcher them? They're so cute. But all animals are cute. So if you're thinking they're not, I don't know, baby chicks, calves, cows, they're all so cute. That's just animals. But that's not the point of why we eat meat. We eat meat to make ourselves healthy, and that's part of it. I respect the soul that's in the animal no matter what it is. If I'm butchering a chicken, it's the same feeling to me as butchering a rabbit. It's still just an animal. So I actually find that my chickens have quite a personality. I can tell which one is my white chicken out of all the 6 just because of how she acts. So animals are animals. They're all lovely. They all have souls. And to me, butchering a rabbit's just the same as butchering any other animal. I do it as quick as possible, as painless as possible, and I give them the best life I can. That's all I can ask of myself as a farmer. So I kind of wish rabbit was more of mainstream meat that people ate more often, because it is remarkably delicious and good for you. And just because of cultural things, it's not something you find in the store very often. But in some countries in Europe and Asia, and well, during the Depression, when there was an issue finding other meats and it was an inexpensive way to feed your family, it was a very popular meat. And I'd never trick anyone into eating something they didn't want to eat. So I'm always going to tell you, if you come over for dinner, this is rabbit's on the menu. But if I wasn't to, and I put it in any chicken dish like I do, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference, and you just think, wow, this is the best farm-raised chicken ever. It has so much flavor, it's so tender. So there are lots of myths when it comes to cooking rabbit, that you have to stew them and cook them for a long time in liquid. That might be true for a wild rabbit because they're really lean, and well, they've been running around, they're probably pretty tough also. But when you raise a rabbit correctly on a farm, you're raising it for ideally 8 weeks, but mine aren't that lovely. They probably take me between 12 and 14 most times. The rabbit is tender because it's younger, and it's not running around like crazy, running for its life all the time in the wild and struggling to get food. So they're really fatty. So the meat's very tender. I really can cook it in any chicken recipe. So I almost never make I almost never make rabbit stew, because I just use it like chicken. I'll just cook it in any other meal. I'll grill it, I'll fry it, I'll put it in stir fries. Blue, stop eating my cord. Hey, she's getting bored. So that's why I eat rabbit. I really like it, and if you get a chance, you should really try some farm-raised rabbit, and just make sure it has some fat on it, because some people don't feed them enough and they are lean, and then they're chewy, and you have to learn how to cook that too. So if you end up with one that's really lean, you're going to want to braise it or cook it in a stew. It tastes great, but without the fat you can't cook it other ways like I do when it has a lot of fat on it. So all right, we'll move on to the next topic. Thanks for listening. So I quite enjoy the rabbit butchering process myself. It's a very clean process, very quick, and all of the dirt and feces that would be on the outside of the animal comes off with the hide. So I'm not worrying about as much contamination as I would with plucking a chicken. Another thing about raising meat chickens versus meat rabbits is when you buy meat chickens, you're going to want to buy, usually people do 100 chicks a year. They raise them up, they butcher them all at once. With the rabbits, I'm having multiple litters. I'm butchering them as I go, so I only have to do a few every few months. And it's a little fresher that way, just because I'm not doing it only once a year. So the next question is how to raise your rabbits, because there are different ways. I choose to raise mine in cages. You can also raise them as a colony where you have one big area and you let them all be together. Or you can also essentially pasture raise them where you have a tractor and you move them around. So always have their benefits and negatives. The one negative way to how I do it, which is in the cage, is that they have a little less room to run around, which I don't love, but I'm taking that over the negatives of the other methods. By having them in a cage, I can control how they have their babies, and I can control environmental factors, and I can control everything to try to keep them all alive. So they're not getting in fights with other rabbits, which can hurt them, and they're not getting parasites, which if you're raising them on the ground, you have to worry about parasites and disease. And since I have a lot of wild rabbits around, disease is a major issue. So I'd be losing rabbits by taking that risk of leaving them in the grass. They're going to eat contaminated grass, and we have hemorrhagic disorders that they can get where they bleed to death, really nasty diseases, and then also parasites. They're going to get a lot more parasites if you have them touching the ground. So I raise them all off the ground in a cage. When comparing this to chickens, I want you to think about what you're buying in the store. Most chickens are raised in cages. If you know your labeling. If you get pasture raised chicken, which is very uncommon, then you're actually getting a chicken that's raised on grass, which is awesome. If you get a free range chicken, which sounds amazing, doesn't it? That means they have to have access to the outside. Access to the outside is defined as a 1 by 1 by 1 square foot section where they can get sunlight. So you can have thousands of chickens in one pen, and as long as they have a chance to go in that little cubicle where they can get a little fresh air and sunlight, they can be labeled as cage free, free range, and it's not the case. They're still in a cage. So as a farmer, you need to control all the factors to try to keep your livestock alive, because that is the goal, to have livestock to produce meat or dairy or eggs, whatever it is. The goal is to keep the animals alive. And the more parasites, dangers, exposure to other animals they get, the less animals you're going to have survive. So the last question is, why does it matter what they look like? Why don't I just go buy a bunch of $10 mixed mutts rabbits and breed them and don't care what they look like and just get the meat out of them? So a lot of people do that, and that's fine. I chose to pick a specific breed, and I want to stick with that breed so that all of the bunnies I produce are purebred. So Delta here is my last remaining non-Rex rabbit. She's a mixed breed between Silver Fox, New Zealand, with a little Rex in there. So I've decided to retire her. She was my best mother. She gave 11 to 13 babies every time, and she took care of 9 or 10 of them every time, survived. So she's a really good mom. So I'm retiring her because her last 2 litters didn't go well. She lost almost all of the bunnies, and on the last one I could tell they just weren't getting fed well. So I don't think she's up for feeding babies anymore. So I can't keep rabbits that I retire. They're not my pets right now. Obviously, if my kids fall in love with one, I'll have a pet rabbit, but these aren't pets. These are for livestock. But the woman who is picking up Wesley said she has an old rabbit that lost its friend, and it seems lonely. So I'm going to give this rabbit away to her. And if it gets along with her rabbit and their friends, then Delta will have a really nice home. So that makes me happy. She's been a really great mother, and she's a pretty sweet girl. So at this point in my farming life, I've decided I really just don't care about rehoming rabbits. It's more trouble than it's worth for the most part. A lot of people don't show up. I get ghosted a lot where I'm just standing there waiting for them to come. They say they're coming and they don't come. And it's just not worth it. So this lady who's coming for the goat was like, oh, you have rabbits? That's cool. I'm looking for a friend for my rabbit. So I told her I had bunnies, and I'm good with rehoming them. I'm just not going to do the annoyance of searching for homes at this point in my life. So it was really nice that she was willing to take an older doe as opposed to a bunny, who they're obviously cuter. They're young, they're little. But the fact that she has an older rabbit that needs a friend, I'm really hoping it works out. Just to add one point to this is to do it the smartest way, what you should try to do is sell one bunny per litter. So for every 6 or so you sell one, then you're paying for all their food, and then you're essentially getting free meat. So eventually I'd like to get to that point, but right now I just don't care enough to sell them because it's annoying. So don't undersell yourself either. Think about how much it costs to make that bunny before you sell it. Take into the account your feed for the mother, housing for the mother, and how long you've raised the bunny, how much food you put into it. When I was feeding them the top quality food, it was costing me $19 a rabbit to raise them up. So don't try to sell them for $20. You're not going to make money. It's just kind of silly. Around here, a $50 rabbit is the least I'd go for. Delta's going for free just because she's getting a nice home. But if I'm selling a bunny, the least I'm going to even try for is $50, because that pays for the animal, which was about $20. And then it also pays for the rest of the litter to eat. The other reason why I don't choose to rehome right now is that in learning what the standard of perfection is for a Rex rabbit, and then looking at my stock, I just feel like I'd rather be rehoming better if I can. So I don't choose to rehome them. Right now I'm putting most of them in my freezer. Once I get them to the point where I feel like their body conformation is more ideal, I'll feel better about rehoming them. The fact that I like the Rex rabbits is just that. I like the look of them, I like the fur texture. Otherwise, that doesn't matter. You can definitely go pick a meat mutt and do great with it. What does matter is the shape of their body. So even in picking a meat mutt, you want to get the most meat out of the animal that you can. The closer you can get to the standard of perfection for the animal, the more meat you're going to end up with. So not only is it going to be better in show, which at this point I don't show animals, but maybe I will eventually. But the point of all of the things that make it a good show animal also will give you more meat and will give you a longer living rabbit who can give birth better. So as I've gone through this process of picking my animals out, I've gone through a lot of rabbits, and it's been really annoying knowing that I really like the Rex and want to stick with that breed. The fact that I don't have a lot in my area has been really frustrating. So the first ones I went to look at, I said I wanted a standard Rex rabbit, which has a weight limit. You need to be a certain size. The first ones I went to look at were miniatures, so they're really small, not meant for meat. They're a pet breed. And then the next ones I drove an hour to get, spent $50 each, no pedigree. They were supposed to be standard Rex, and again, not to standard of perfection. They were 6-pound animals, so they didn't actually classify as standard Rex, even though they were sold that way. So next, I was very excited when I finally, after years of looking, found these guys. This is Tango, and her brother was Farquaad, and I had a couple of her daughters from that pairing. So I was excited that they're actually standard Rex, and that's all I cared about. I'm like, oh my God, I found the rabbit I want. But as I've been learning more and more, I learned all the faults that I have with this pairing. They have a very long shoulder, so when you pose them, kind of scrunch them up. You want their toes in line with their hips. You want their elbows down. The shoulder here goes out more, and then it went up. What you really want is almost a ball shape when you're done posing your rabbits. So these guys have a very long shoulder, which is a negative quality to them. So I'm looking to breed that out of them. One thing you really want to make sure you have is a good buck. Your buck is half your herd. So I did decide to remove Farquaad from my herd. This one's brother, and I am keeping the other buck I have, Mendez, because he is much better shape. So his offspring should have a slightly better shape. That being said, your buck's half your herd, he matters, but also the doe is throwing her traits in there. So this one's going to continue giving a longer shoulder than a doe, which would have a better shape to her. So she is not posed correctly. I'm not good at posing, but as you can see, her toes tip out. That means she's pinched, which means she has a more narrow hip cavity. So you want them not to be pinched so that they are less likely to have kits get stuck during birth. So this is another negative quality of this rabbit. So you can kind of see this area right here. It's very long. It really should come up right from here. Okay, and then quick look of her back. She's a spade shape, which means she's skinnier up here, which is also a negative trait. You really want them to be high and flat backed and come down, which means that when you're talking about meat, these muscles, which are the back straps, are bigger, fuller. You're getting a lot more out of that animal. And then you want them to be full to the table here, which she's okay, but not great. So that being said, I was really excited when I found my next 3 rabbits I got, which is Piper here and the other 2 gray rabbits, Morello and Nichols. And the fact that they had slightly better shoulders, they're less pinched in the back. Pardon her molting, she usually looks a lot prettier, but all this brown is going to shed out. So even these 3, which were a lot better than the original 2 I got, are not great. They have lots of faults, which I hope to improve when I get a new buck. So the things we're looking at when we're talking about the shape of a rabbit, why we pose them, why we scrunch them up to see what they look like, it's not a vanity thing. It doesn't matter for shows. I'm not looking to just get a show animal out of them and to brag that I have a nicer rabbit. That's nothing to do with this. To have a show animal, the traits usually reflect the type of animal you have. So if you're showing a dairy goat, you want them to have a nice udder for milk, and you want them to be able to birth kids well, and all those things matter for that animal, and that's why they're important in show. Same thing goes for rabbits. If you're looking for a pet rabbit, you want them to be the best looking pet rabbit you can get. But when it comes to a meat animal, you want the entire part of the rabbit, shoulders, back, hips, you want them to be best for the animal they're supposed to be, which is for meat. I want them to produce the most meat. So in breeding the best I can get, I am going to be also giving my family more meat for the same lives I'm taking. For me, as an animal breeder, I believe it's my responsibility to produce the best animals I can. If I'm sending any animal off this farm, I want to feel good that I'm improving the breed. I don't want to just take money and send off something that is really poor quality, which is going to breed, make more babies, get sold to other people. That doesn't feel good for me. So my goal is to keep improving my rabbitry and produce the best animals I can within my financial means. So I will be replacing rabbits as needed until I feel really happy about where I am with the shape of them. And on top of that, maybe one day one of my kids will want to show. And if I keep improving my rabbits at one day, I'll give them a chance to do well in show. So that could be fun also, just as something for them to do, going to fairs and stuff. So I'm very excited. My friend is giving me an very generous gift. She's giving me 2 buck rabbits for free. And she's just a nice person. It's amazing. So one of them is an older buck with only a partial pedigree, and he is much more beautiful than all the rabbits in my herd. And then the other one is a 7-week-old baby buck who is going to be with his mom another week, so I won't be able to pick them up for a little while longer. But he is full pedigree and just better than anything I've ever had in my herd. So my new plan is going to be, I'm going to take the older buck and he's going to breed all my girls. I'm then going to evaluate the babies I get out of them, and hopefully he enhances his traits and makes all of the problems I have with my does go away. So hopefully the offspring I get from that pairing improves the herd. And then once the little boy is big enough, my plan will be to breed him to all of the new does that I got using the older buck. And since the little one is much more beautifully balanced than even the bigger boy, and definitely better than all my does, hopefully that pairing will produce a much better herd overall. So my goal is over 2-3 generations that I'm going to make better meat rabbits. So I'm going to show the pictures of what she sent me of what these boys look like. Thanks for joining me on Bernadoodle's Barnyard. Please remember to like, subscribe, and ring the notification bell. We'll see you next time.